Okay, so let's first have a glance for these set of diagrams. So if I consider the first and the second diagram, we kept the demand curve more or less same. The supply S is quite elastic compared to this S in the second diagram. So in the first diagram, supply curves are a bit elastic compared to the second one. And if you look at the boxes, by this time, I think you can remember what is happening. So this is E is the initial equilibrium where the demand and the supply curves are cutting each other, and this BE is indicating the equilibrium price. Now, whenever there will be a tax, we can capture either by leftward shift of the demand curve or leftward shift of the supply curve. So here we have considered the leftward shift of the supply curve. Cost of production is increasing, and for that matter, the supply curve is shifting to the backward direction. So as it is happening, the demand curve remaining constant, the new equilibrium is given by F, and AF is the tax-ridden equilibrium price. Price increases from BE to AF after imposition of tax. Now, suppliers are not enjoying the full amount of tax, or the price, after inclusion of tax. Rather, we are dropping the quantity, and when the quantity is cutting the original supply curve, we are getting another price CH. This CH is the price enjoyed by the suppliers. This is the price net of tax. For the concerned quantity, this is the price net of tax. So the CH price will be enjoyed by the suppliers, whereas AF, this is the market price of the commodity after imposition of the tax. The rectangle AFHC, this is the tax revenue. This entire rectangle, this is the tax revenue. Okay, and in this rectangle, a part is coming from the consumer surplus part, that is given by AFGB, and another part is coming from the producer surplus part, that is given by BGHC. And FEH consists of two triangles. This first part, FGE, is the loss in consumer surplus, whereas this triangle GEH is the loss in the producer surplus. This FGH will neither enjoyed by the producer nor by the consumers. Even government will be not able to appropriate this part of loss in consumer surplus as well as producer surplus. So none of the agents in the society will be able to enjoy this part, and this is known as deadweight loss. This is undesirable consequence of this kind of government intervention. Nobody wants that. There will be some efficiency loss in the system. This loss is undesirable loss. However, there will be this kind of loss in the system. Now, this AFGB, that is the government revenue, which is coming from the consumer surplus part, that is known as burden of tax on consumers. And BGHC, that is the loss in producer surplus, which will be enjoyed by the government, or the part of the producer surplus which will be appropriated by government, is known as burden of tax on producers. Okay, now if I look at the first diagram, the area AFGB is relatively greater than the area BGHC. The area AFGB is relatively greater than that of the area BGHC, which indicates the burden of tax on consumers are a bit higher compared to the burden of tax on the producers. Now, if I go to the second diagram, where I am considering comparatively inelastic demand, after the similar kind of analysis, we are finding that the burden of tax on consumers and burden of tax on producers, these are more or less same. Here the rectangles AFGB, that is the part of the consumer surplus which is enjoyed by the government in the form of tax revenue, and the rectangle BGHC, that is the loss in producer surplus which will be appropriated by the government in the form of tax revenue. These two rectangles are more or less similar. So the burden of tax will be more or less equally shared by consumers as well as producers. Now, if I make the supply curve more inelastic, if I make the supply curve more inelastic, look, this rectangle, that is the part of the consumer surplus which will be appropriated by the government, that is AFGB, that is even lesser than BGHC, that is the loss in producer surplus appropriated by government in the form of tax revenue. So this upper rectangle is becoming thinner, whereas the lower rectangle is becoming wider as I consider more inelastic supply. Okay, so if I compare ABC, it is clear that the elastic the supply, the greater is the possibility of burden shifting. Elastic the supply, the greater is the possibility of burden shifting. Okay, and here I have considered a negatively sloped demand as well as negatively sloped supply curve. I'm going to this point later after completing this part. So do anyone have any question for this part? When the supply curve is positively sloped, are you understanding? As the supply curve is becoming steeper and steeper, the burden on consumer is becoming thinner and thinner. On the other hand, as the supply becomes more elastic, it will be easier for the suppliers to shift most of the burden of tax on consumers. Are you getting the idea?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It will be better if I draw at least one diagram in the board.
Yes, ma'am, that would be better.
Okay, so please draw this part. Okay, I didn't mark the equilibrium quantity. Okay. If you like, you can mark the quantity as well. Now I am considering price net of tax. So So this is P1C, and this point I'm marking as G, this as H. Okay, and I can draw the supply curve as well, the tax read-in supply curve as well. Okay, this is the demand curve. This is the supply curve. ST prime. Okay, so this is the idea. So first we will have a demand curve, then we will have the initial supply curve S0. S0 is the equilibrium, P0 is the corresponding equilibrium price, and then we are imposing an indirect tax. Cost of production is increasing, supply curve is shifting to the backward direction to ST prime. It is cutting the original demand curve at the point F. The new equilibrium price after imposition of tax is given by PTF. Okay, and at this price, the supply shrinks to QT. Supply shrinks to QT. So this is the point to start with, and then we are also marking the price net of tax, which is given by P1H. This is the price which will be enjoyed by the sellers after imposition of tax. The initial consumer surplus is DP0E. Now, after imposition of tax, the consumer surplus reduces to DPTF. The part of loss of consumer surplus marked by the rectangle PTFGP0, PTFGP0 will be appropriated by the government in the form of tax revenue. However, FGE is the loss because many consumers will be not able to afford the high price of the commodity given by PTF. So there will be a social loss, which is marked by FGE. On the other hand, if I look at the problem from the seller's viewpoint, S0 is the original supply curve, and the producer surplus is marked by P0E S0. Now, when there will be a tax read-in price PTF, the price net of tax enjoyed by the suppliers is given by P1H. So producer surplus reduces from P0E S0 to P1H S0. A part of the loss in producer surplus, P0GHP1, will be appropriated by the government in the form of tax revenue. However, GEH, another part of the loss, this loss is appearing because of the fact that The resource will not be optimally utilized when the supply shrinks to QT. So there will be an efficiency loss in the production part that is given by GEH. Okay. Now here we are bringing the idea of elasticity too. We are telling that when the supply curve is elastic like this, in that case, the producer surplus P naught GHP1 is lesser than the loss in consumer surplus or the burden on consumers given by PTFGP naught. The burden on the consumers will be greater than the burden on the sellers. So this is the idea. Any question on this part? There will be three parts while you are answering to these kind of things. First, initial equilibrium, how equilibrium is changing or why equilibrium is changing. So this part will be there. So after the imposition of tax, what will be the immediate effects on the market economy? This will be one part. The second part will be based on consumer surplus, producer surplus, deadweight loss, tax revenue, etc. The third part will be based on the elasticity concept. In other words, the third part will analyze the burden concept. So those who will develop the project on subsidy, they should follow this mechanism. First, the immediate consequences. Okay. And then there will be some consequences which will help us to unintended consequences, that is the loss in CS, loss in PS, deadweight loss, etc. So all this part will come in the second section. And in the third section, you have to analyze the role of demand elasticity as well as the supply elasticity. Okay. So, then we can consider more elastic supply or less elastic supply, and we can show the consequences. Okay. So, let's consider. Try to keep the demand elasticity more or less same. More or less same. Because while we are drawing, supply is steeper here. This is the tax ridden price. The equilibrium price was this. Okay. Now I'll consider the QT, the new quantity after imposition of tax. The rest of the analysis is same. Now, if you compare this above rectangle with below rectangle, we are finding that the burden on consumer that is relatively lower compared to the burden on producer. So as the supply curve is becoming more inelastic, this area is increasing. So here, this area is relatively greater than this area. Okay, whereas in this case, this area is greater than this. Now, if you make supply more inelastic, I hope you are understanding. This is the equilibrium, initial equilibrium. And I hope you are understanding. This area is even getting, the area is even increasing. So this is happening. As the supply is becoming more and more inelastic, other things remaining constant, the relative burden on suppliers will be higher because the suppliers do not have any option. Okay, whenever there will be greater option, the burden will become lesser. So if demand is very much elastic, burden on consumers will be lesser. If demand becomes very inelastic, in that case, burden will increase because whatever be the price, you should buy this commodity. So this is the idea. In context of supply too, if the supply is more elastic, that means suppliers have more option. So for a little bit change in the market price, they will shift to production of other commodities. So if this is the context, in that case, the burden sharing will be lesser. And if the supply curve becomes more and more inelastic, in that case, the relative share of the burden on the suppliers will be greater. The burden will start increasing. Inelastic the curve, greater will be the share of burden. Be it consumers, be it sellers. Okay. So for this kind of comparative static analysis, while I am changing the demand elasticity, I am keeping supply elasticity constant, otherwise we will be not able to compare. On the other hand, when we are considering the change in supply elasticity, we are considering the demand to remain unchanged. Okay, so for the comparative static analysis, you have to consider the ceteris paribus. Other things remaining constant, if I change one component, in that case, what will be the impact? That will be the idea. Okay, the subsidy analysis will be just reverse of this. in that case, after giving subsidy, there will be a reduction in price, and for that matter, quantity will increase. Here there is the problem of excess demand. Price is increasing because of tax. So, the quantity supplied will immediately fall, and there will be a gap between the equilibrium demand and the amount supplied now. So there will be some excess demand. Just the reverse will happen in context of subsidy. If producers get some subsidy, actual price, the need to have from the market, that will be lesser. And for that matter, they will get incentive to produce more. So there will be the context of excess supply. So here you are reading everything in terms of excess demand. And in case of subsidy, everything will come in terms of excess supply. However, the structure of the analysis will remain same. Consequences with respect to the initial market equilibrium. Then the second part is what is happening to the society in terms of CS, PS and deadweight loss. And the third part will be what is the role of elasticity in this context. Okay, separately we have to discuss the role of demand elasticity and that of supply elasticity. Now, any question regarding the supply elasticity for these diagrams? Is it okay to all of you? Are you understanding, yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Okay, finally, here I have considered a sub case, where the supply curve is negatively sloped. So it may happen that under certain contexts, the supply may be negatively sloped. As price is increasing, supply is falling. If, the commodity is made of rare resources, in that case, it may happen that as price of the commodity is increasing, supply is falling. Okay, so there may be this kind of thing. So if the supply curve is negatively sloped, then this is the initial market equilibrium. BE is the equilibrium price. Now, after imposition of tax, here there is the reverse relation. So the supply curve will shift to the rightward direction. So it is moving like this, and the new market price of the commodity is becoming this. AF will be the new market price. Okay. However, I marked the points using the same points, which I used earlier. So the tax revenue here is given by ACHF. So ACHF is the tax revenue. The total tax revenue, that is given by ACHF, because this is the rectangle which has been marked with, the initial price and the price net of tax. Okay, so this will be the tax revenue. Okay, here also it was marked in that way, that the tax ridden price and the price net of tax. If I consider the rectangle bounded by these two prices, we are getting the tax revenue. So here also, this is the tax ridden price and CH is the price net of tax. So this rectangle will indicate the total tax revenue. Okay. Now, the consumer's burden share is ABGF, whereas the seller's burden sharing is BCHG. So this lower rectangle will be the burden share by the sellers, whereas this big rectangle AFGB or ABGF, this will be the burden on the consumers. So if the supply curve is negatively sloped, in that case, burden on consumers will be very, very high. The burden on consumers is given by AFGB, whereas the burden on sellers, that is given by CBGH, that is the burden on sellers, and tax revenue is given by AFHC. So consumers are losing this bigger rectangle. A part of the loss in consumer surplus will be enjoyed by the producers, whereas another part in the loss of consumer surplus will be collected by the government in the form of tax revenue. I am repeating, if the supply curve is negatively sloped, when an indirect tax will be imposed, the total loss in consumer surplus is given by, this is the initial equilibrium, now this is the price, so if I want to mark the loss part, this entire thing, HABE, is the total loss in consumer surplus. Okay, sorry, the total loss in consumer surplus is given by FABE. FABE, that is the loss in consumer surplus. FABE. When equilibrium shifts from E to F, the loss in consumer surplus is given by FABE. Sorry. No. Okay, so I have not that app downloaded. I'll be not able to write on the PowerPoint. Okay, so please note down, for the negatively sloped supply curve, when the equilibrium shifts from E to F, the total loss in consumer surplus is given by FABE. FABE. A part of the loss in consumer surplus given by FACH will be appropriated by the government. FSCH will be appropriated by the government in the form of tax revenue. On the other hand, another part in the loss of consumer surplus given by the rectangle HCBG will be enjoyed by the producers. This part may be appropriated by the government in form of tax revenue if a typical policy measure is taken by the government. Okay, so it is not evident that this part will be appropriated by the government, this part will be generally enjoyed by the suppliers in this case. This part in the loss in consumer surplus. However, if there is a stringent policy, in that case, along with AFHC, the government may appropriate this part of the loss in consumer surplus. However, for that, government needs to frame a new policy. With the indirect taxation policy, they will be able to take away only AFHC, not the HCBG part. However, if there is certain policy, in that case, it may be appropriated. Okay, the triangle FGE is the dead weight loss. The triangle FGE is the dead weight loss. So the scenario is a bit different if I consider a negatively sloped supply curve. It is just an instance, I just wanted to show you for different types of comparative statics, you need to practice the things in this way. Do the diagram in this way, in that way, and check what is happening. Okay. So the most important is the first three diagrams or the diagrams we considered in our board, where we are finding that elastic the supply, the greater is the possibility of burden shifting on the consumers. Inelastic the supply, sellers need to bear the higher burden of tax. So this is the idea of taxation, indirect taxation. So this is all for taxation part, and reverse of this is subsidy. So you develop your project, the group, is required to develop the project on subsidy. Please develop the project on subsidy. However, I am repeating, everybody should learn everything. Otherwise, you will be not able to raise the question, or you will be not able to understand all the things very well. So you have to develop a particular project. However, go through all the topics. Otherwise, you will not have the full sense of the entire matter. Okay. Okay, next, I'll tell you something about the public good. Okay, I'll tell you something about the public good. So before shifting to the idea of public good, anybody, any question? There, if I divide the commodities and the services broadly into two parts, there are commodities for which there will be the market, Already we developed some idea, demand curve, supply curve, perfect competition, equilibrium. If price changes from equilibrium because of government intervention, consumer surplus, producer surplus, dead weight loss, elasticity. So we discussed a lot of things regarding this type of commodities. The first type of commodities are the services, which is marketable in nature. Now, parallelly, there are certain commodities and services when market fails to exist. So we have to identify several characteristics of the commodities and services which will help us to understand when market exists and when it is impossible to have any market for these kind of commodities and services. Okay, so can anyone tell us, if you have any knowledge about this thing, what are the basic characteristics a commodity or the service should possess so that we can sell the commodity or buy the commodity from the market? That is, market will exist for the commodity.
Ma'am,
Any idea? Anyone? Yes, please.
ma'am, the commodity should satisfy utility of a person.
If the commodity, if market fails, it does not mean that we will not have any utility from that commodity. Otherwise, we
Ma'am,
will. Yes.
maybe the commodity should be tangible
Tangible. Okay.
or have a physical existence about money. That's tangible only.
Okay. So you are thinking that market will fail for the commodities and services which are not tangible or physical existence is not there. Okay.
Yeah, ma'am.
No, no, this is not the right
Ma'am,
answer.
IT services are not tangible, but they are marketable.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Therefore, I told that the second definition is not right,
Ma'am, ma'am,
Yeah, please.
ma'am, marketable goods are like those which are those goods people want to buy. They want to buy from the market, means they want to utilize something from that. That are considered as
That
marketable
means
goods.
it has demand.
It has a demand. Okay, okay. So,
The
none of
Ma'am,
the
may
commodity
I,
have a
answers.
fixed
ma'am,
price.
may I try?
Yeah, please. One more chance, not more than
Ma'am,
that.
ma'am,
One chance,
ma'am,
last chance. Yes.
ma'am, a good that can be easily bought or sold with no impact on price. I mean, very little impact.
Little impact of price on the commodities, and for that matter, market fails. You are trying to tell this, or
No, ma'am,
for that
that
market
we
exists?
can buy it easily with no or very little impact on price.
Okay, buy easily. Okay. In that case, market will exist. You are telling that.
Yes, ma'am.
But
Okay.
ma'am,
In
if
that
we
case,
consider,
we can also buy gold and diamonds. Okay, very expensive cars, isn't it?
ma'am,
Okay.
market fails for perishable goods which
Market
perish.
fails for perishable goods. Don't you consume orange, apple,
Yeah.
vegetables? Consume or not consume?
Consume.
And pay price for the commodity?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so and I hope you understand the commodities are perishable as well. The vegetables and the fruits we are talking about.
Yeah.
Okay,
Ma'am, if the good is free like air, then we might not have the market in order to purchase it.
okay. I just not got the answer, and it is not expected as well. However, I just thought if somebody uh, went through this kind of discussion at +2 level. So now I am
And
writing
maybe there
about
is when like the factory is immobile, like we cannot supply the factors of production, then the market
Oh, no,
fails.
no, no. Now look at the e-boat. So these are the two characteristics make the commodities perfectly marketable. Commodities can be bought and sold, you know, like this. The characteristics are: number one, rivalry in consumption. If I pay for the commodity, I'll be able to buy that particular unit. whenever I'm going to the market, I'll pay for a loaf, because if I pay, I'll get that particular packet for my own consumption or for consumption of my family. Okay, I'll be able to exclude somebody else by paying the price for this commodity. So I'll be able to exclude others while I am paying for this commodity. Okay, so the first feature that a marketable commodity should possess, that is excludability. The consumption of the commodity should follow the nature of excludability. Paying the price for the commodity, I'll be able to exclude somebody else from consuming this particular commodity. So that is the first requirement. Okay. Now, if I consider a program like, mosquito killing program, I am paying for this program. However, when that particular program is taken, will it be possible to exclude others in my locality or my neighborhood? I'm bringing a program in my locality by paying something. However, when I am applying this particular service in my neighborhood or locality, will it be possible to exclude others? Or I am paying something to bring street light in my particular lane. Now, if or once the street light is there, will it be possible to exclude others from enjoying that street light? Tell me,
No,
yes
ma'am.
or no?
No, ma'am, we certainly can't exclude the others, ma'am.
We cannot exclude the others. Okay, we cannot exclude the others by paying for this particular commodity or the service. Defense service. If I pay something for the defense service, I'm going ahead and paying 1 lakh every month on defense service, say. Okay, will it be possible for me to exclude somebody else from enjoying this particular security service? No. Police service? No. So all these things are there. So if paying for certain commodities or services, I cannot exclude the others, the question is, who will pay for this commodity? I'll wait for somebody else will wait for somebody else. So it will go on like this, because we will say that why I'll pay only. Because once I buy this particular service or commodity, others will be able to enjoy this particular commodity or service. Okay. So this is one concept. I'll be not able to exclude if there is a commodity or the service for which I'll be not able to exclude the others by paying something. In that case, nobody will be willing to pay for these commodities. So we need some other body who will able to, or who will spend for these commodities, because we understand these commodities are really important, or commodities or services are really important for our security, existence, etc. All of us need street light. All of us need a very secured border. All of us need, the mosquito killing program. All of us need all these things. However, nobody will be willing to pay for these kind of commodities or the services. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Others, are you understanding? Am
Yes,
I
ma'am.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Second, okay. Second point is rivalry. Okay. So if this is also, related to the idea of excludability to some extent. Consumption in general for the marketable commodities are rival in nature. Rival in nature. Okay. Because if you buy this commodity, I'll be not able to buy it. Okay. If I go at 11 o'clock in the shop, I'll not get these vegetables. So consumption is rival. If you actually paid for these commodities, you are bringing all these things. Okay, when I'll go to the market, I'll not get that fish. I'll not get that vegetable. So that's the problem. So consumption is rival in nature. If the consumption is rival in nature, then also we will like to pay for the commodity. Okay, so consumption should be rival in nature. There is a chance of excluding others while I am paying for the commodities. If these two properties hold, in that case, market will exist. Otherwise, if I cannot exclude, if the consumption is not rival means, both of us are equally enjoying the street light. Okay, the consumption is not rival. You are consuming, that is not indicating I'll be not able to consume it. So street light, in case of street light, the consumption is non-rival. You are enjoying, I am enjoying, the third person coming from outside, she is also enjoying. Okay, so everybody is enjoying. So if there is a park in the locality, everybody can go there for the morning walk. Okay, so all these things are there. So if the commodities or the services are rival and if excludability principle holds, in that case market will exist. The market we talked about, that type of market will exist. However, if none of these two properties hold, or both the properties do not hold, in that case, market fails to exist. Market fails to exist. There is some opposite side as well. Whenever there is a pollution, air pollution, everybody needs to face it, So, there is some factory, say, in your locality. And for that matter, there is some air pollution in your locality. Now, the factory is understanding there is some additional cost of production apart from production cost. The problem is how to capture this additional cost. Okay, what exactly will be the cost? What exactly will be the price of, taking care of that cost? All these things are not clear. So I'm not a bad owner of the farm. I'm a good owner, say, good citizen. And I want that the production will take place because there will be employment. At the same time, I don't want to, spoil the air. I don't want to spoil the environment in the locality too. However, what is the exact calculation of the social cost, that I am not understanding. Therefore, the price of the commodity, which is in general in standard theory is based on cost of production, there will be some problem in calculation of the price. If the social cost is too high, I have to keep a very high price of the commodity. Okay, and I'll be able to take care of the pollution, installing some other machines, etc. However, what is the exact social cost? What price can be charged if I want to take care of this entire thing? This information is not here clearly. And for that matter, even if I am a good citizen and I don't really want to pollute the nature that much, at the same time, I want to generate some employment, there is some issue. What is the exact volume of social cost? So, what will be the exact price of the commodity? What will be the price by which I'll be able to take care of this social cost? These things are not very clear always. So these issues are also there. Okay, so there are commodities and services which are important in the society. However, because of non-excludability and non-rivalry nature of those commodities and the services, it is not possible to buy and sell the commodities in a general market. Okay, because we will be not able to generate the actual demand for the commodity because nobody will like to reveal it. Everybody has demand for this commodity and service. However, nobody will reveal it. Now, if I ask whether you need a border security or not, and if you say yes, then to what extent, what will be the price you will be willing to pay? If I ask all these questions, nobody will speak. In fact, in these kind of system, E-class system, generally people do not speak. And if I ask all these questions, will you speak? Yes or no? Nobody is speaking, in fear of the things that maybe that person will need to pay something. Okay, so we need all these things. Okay, so I'll give a brief note on these things, because a particular group will prepare their project on this particular area. So I hope everybody has pen and paper with you, so I'll give you a brief note on this, and then you will develop from this note. Okay, so please write down the first property. The first property that distinguishes public goods concerns whether individuals concerns whether individuals may be excluded from the benefits of individuals may be excluded from the benefits of consuming the good. The first property that distinguishes public goods concerns whether individuals may be excluded from the benefits of consuming the goods, consuming the good. This is known as non-exclusivity problem. This is known as non-exclusivity problem. For most of the private goods, Such exclusion is private goods means marketable commodities. For most private goods, such exclusion is indeed possible. Indeed possible. Hyphen. I can easily be excluded. I can easily be excluded from consuming a. I can easily be excluded from consuming an ice cream if I don't pay for it. Next, in some cases, however, such exclusion is either very costly or impossible. In some cases, however, such exclusion is either very costly or impossible. National defense is the standard example. National defense is the standard example. Once a defense system is established, once a defense system is established, everyone in a country benefits from it. Everyone in a country benefits from it, whether they pay for it or not. Whether they pay for it or not. On a more local level, the similar comments apply to goods or services such as mosquito control, or a program which will help the people to prevent a disease. Every time we get this kind of program, for dengue, now for COVID, do this, do that, wear your mask, etc. So, when we are using any telephone call, all these message is coming. So during the lockdown period, this is the lockdown period, you have to do this, do that. Now, after the lockdown, in this period, you do this, do that. Now, in second wave period, do this, do that, all these things. In these cases, once the programs are implemented, no one in the community can be excluded. No one in the community can be excluded from those benefits. Whether he or she pays for them or not. Whether he or she pays for them or not. Paragraph. Thus, a good is exclusive if it is relatively easy to exclude.
Ma'am, can you repeat the last line once more?
A good is exclusive if it is relatively easy to exclude individuals from benefiting from the good once it is produced. Thus, a good is exclusive if it is relatively easy to exclude individuals from benefiting from the good once it is produced. On the other hand, a good is non-exclusive. On the other hand, a good is non-exclusive. If it is impossible, within bracket or costly. A good is non-exclusive if it is impossible, within bracket or costly, to exclude individuals from benefiting from the good.
Ma'am, once can you repeat this line?
Yes, what is the question?
Ma'am, once can you repeat the last line? On the other
Yes.
hand.
Yeah, on the other hand, a good is non-exclusive if it is impossible, within bracket or costly, to exclude individuals from benefiting from the good. Done. Come to the next point. Non-rivalry. A second property that characterizes public good is non-rivalry.
Ma'am, characterizes?
public goods is non-rivalry. A non-rival good is one. A non-rival good is one for which additional a non-rival good is one for which additional units can be consumed. Additional units can be consumed at zero. Additional units can be consumed at zero social incremental cost. With additional units, which additional units can be consumed at zero social incremental, within bracket you can write marginal cost. So what I am telling, a non-rival good is a good where once the commodity or the service is produced without bearing any additional cost, you can allow one more people, thousands more people, 1 lakh more people to consume. Okay. The defense is that example, national defense. Once the national defense is there without increasing the cost, without bearing any additional marginal cost or incremental cost, I can cover 1,000 or 1 lakh more people inside the land. Radio, television broadcasts. Once I develop the system, broadcasting system, I'll be able to accommodate more and more people without bearing any incremental cost, without bearing any additional marginal cost. Am I right? For the broadcasting, once a channel is there, or broadcasting system is there, you can broadcast it to 1,000 more people or 1 lakh more people. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so once the internet service is there, so, if you come to presidency, already there is Wi-Fi around the entire university. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether 2 students are getting the chance to use it or 2,000 student is getting the chance to use this. Okay, actually when the system was really perfect before COVID, we used to give the Wi-Fi to the nearby schools as well, both the Hare school and the Hindu school. Okay, so they get Wi-Fi from Presidency University. So without, because how or why we can give it, so once we have a big server with that system, we can generate, the internet system in that entire locality. Okay, so for that matter, we can give connection to more schools once we have that big server in our institution. So all these things are there. So without bearing an incremental cost, I can bring more people in my periphery. Okay, so this is the thing. Add for most goods, of course, consumption of additional amounts for most goods, of course, consumption of additional amounts involves some marginal costs of production.
Ma'am, can you repeat?
For most goods, of course, consumption of additional amounts involves some marginal costs of production. Consumption of one more pizza requires that consumption of one more pizza requires that various resources be devoted to its production. For most of the goods it will happen. However, there are certain goods where this is not true. Hyphen. Having one more automobile cross a highway bridge during an off hyphen peak peak. Having one more automobile cross a highway bridge during an off-peak period does not increase the marginal cost of setting a bridge. Because the bridge is already in place, having one more vehicle cross.
Ma'am, because the
New sentence. Because the bridge is already in place. Having one more vehicle cross requires no additional resource use and does not reduce consumption elsewhere. Requires no additional resource use and does not reduce consumption elsewhere. radio and television broadcastings are other examples. Okay, got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next, we have to understand different varieties of public good, So there are 4 types of commodities. If I make a table, it may happen that commodity is rival in consumption and exclusion principle holds. In that case, it is a private good, or any marketable commodity we discussed so far. The reverse is commodity is neither rival in consumption and exclusion principle does not hold. In that case, it is a pure public good. In between, it may happen the consumption is rival, however, exclusion is not possible. Consumption is rival. Now, I mentioned in the last example of peak period. The car is passing in off-peak period, So I mentioned about this. Why I mentioned this? Because if I consider the peak period, one more car has some other costs like congestion. If there is congestion, we have to bear a huge time cost. Road jam. Okay, so there is time cost involved in it. Okay, so it may happen that consumption is rival, however, you cannot exclude. Okay, or another possibility is there, consumption is non-rival, however, using some kind of charge, etc., we can exclude some people. Okay, cable TV. Okay, we can exclude some people, fixing some charge for these channels. So this is the idea. So there are several types of commodities in the reality. Pure marketable commodity, pure public good. In between, it is possible. Consumption is rival, however, exclusion is not possible. On the other hand, it may happen that consumption is non-rival, however, exclusion is possible. Okay, so these 2 types will be in between the marketable commodities and the pure public goods. So now we are coming to this part. Okay, so please write down on the basis of rivalry and exclusive principles, we can divide the commodities into 4 varieties.
We can divide the
commodities into 4 categories. We can divide the commodities into 4 categories. So let me prepare a table.
Ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, I was asking that public goods can be produced by both government and non-government organization also, na?
Generally, government will produce this because, directly from the market, we will not get price for these commodities. So generally, the poor private organization will not like to provide this. However, there may be public-private partnership. Okay, in that case, government is paying something to that private organization to develop this thing.
Ma'am, the example you told, na, television broadcasting.
Yes.
And that is so, ma'am, it is done by private players also.
Yes, private thing is there, however, whether the consumption is both non-rival and non-exclusion principle work or not, that you have to understand, because if it happens that consumption is rival, non-exclusion is there, then the nature of the commodity will be something. And again, I mentioned about consumption is non-rival, however you can exclude. Now if you can exclude, you can charge some price, and in that case private party may come up with some price for that particular service, so all these things are there. So let me first introduce four types of commodities, and then you will understand, there are certain commodities which is in between, and for that nature of the commodities, yes, we can go for some charges, etc. In that case, the private organization may come in between, isn't it?
Okay, ma'am.
Ma'am, I have another question. May I ask?
Yes, yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, as we have seen, ma'am, in several countries and including India, there are certain public sector organizations which to provide several consumer goods. Like in India, we once had modern bakery which produced breads. Like it was
Hmm.
a consumer good, but it was produced by a public sector unit. So these
Hmm.
goods can we consider it to be marketable commodity or public commodity? I mean public good.
Marketable commodity. If government produces something or private organization produces something, in that case the commodity will be public or private. That I didn't say.
Acha,
Okay.
acha. I can understand that. Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, I also have one question. In the
Yes.
last paragraph, when you talked about non-rivalry routes, you give the example of bridges. That is, if one more car goes, the marginal revenue does not affect it. But
I
in
mentioned
many
also
cases,
about off-peak period. Look at that. Look at that. Okay. Got it? Off-peak period.
actually, I was talking about the taxes. Like we have to pay toll tax for that. So, like some people can avoid it while
Yes.
going to
So
the.
in that case, let me first introduce four types of commodity. So if one particular characteristic hold, another does not hold, in that case we can go for that kind of toll tax, etc.
Ma'am, non-rival excludable commodity, I think it is.
Yeah. So let's see. You know, for that matter, I am talking about all four varieties. Otherwise, there will be some confusion. So here I'm writing exclusive. Here I'm writing rival. Okay. So here all private commodities, like pizza, uh, houses, rival and exclusive. So far we talked about this kind of commodities only. And here we can put etc. Fishing grounds, public grazing land, clean air, sorry, swimming pool, more example can be here like satellite television transmission, satellite television transmissions, etc. Okay. Now please look at this part. This part. Consumption, we are telling rival. Rival, yes. Okay. However, it is difficult to exclude others. Okay. It is difficult to exclude others. Clean air. Consumption is rival. If there is congestion, there will be problem, and congestion creates a problem. That means consumption is rival. Fishing grounds, public grazing land, clean air, So for these kind of things, actually, we call it the common properties. These we call, this category, we call commons or common property. Okay, so nobody has any legal right to keep the place for his or her own. It's not like my house, or it's not like my garden, or it's not like our university playground. It's not like that. It is a common property. Grazing land is a common property. Fishing ground is a common place. Clean air, common property. I do not have something legal paper in my hand so that I can exclude it. We are understanding congestion is creating a problem. In that sense, consumption is rival. However, I do not have sufficient legal right to exclude the other. So these belong to the idea of common property. So there is a huge literature on common property resources, especially in context of environmental economics, and how to take care of these resources, how we can somehow calculate the social cost of congestion, how we can charge something while somebody is coming in some park for morning walk. So all these literature has been developed immensely. Okay, especially starting from late 80s and 90s, the literature developed in this area a lot. Okay, common property resources. How to take care of common property resources. Okay, nowadays also you will find that nature matters. During the COVID period, a lots of things came since the pollution, went down to a particular level, all the animals and the birds we could see, which we could not see for last 100, 200 years. So all these things happened. So congestion has a cost. However, it is very difficult to take care of that cost and charge a price accordingly. So common property resource is a typical type of resource when there is rivalry. However, it's difficult or very costly to exclude others. Okay, so here what we may think about, government intervention may help us. Government intervention sometimes may help us. We are not allowing more than this. Or if you come here, you have to follow these rules and regulation. So some government intervention may help in this context. Okay, so common property resource is a kind of resources in an economy. Okay, next is the variety when I'm coming here. This variety, where, in terms of rivalry, it is no. Consumption is not rival in the sense, it doesn't matter who else is coming to the swimming pool or who else is coming to the bridge. Okay. However, somehow we will be able to exclude other. As somebody started to say that in a bridge we can set a toll system and we can regulate all these things. Already when we go to use some highway, we know the toll tax system is already there. So in that sense we can regulate something, and here some private organization may also come, and together the private organization and government may take care of this kind of commodities or the services. Okay, so bridges, swimming pools, broadcasting, internet, network, so all these things are there. So private, public, mixture of private and public can produce this kind of commodities because we can charge a price, because of the exclusive nature. Exclusion principle works for these kind of commodities and services. However, we have to remember the consumption is not rival while we are setting the price of the commodity, etc. And for that matter, we need government intervention so that the price is not too high. Okay, if price is too high, in that case, that will be the private bridge, private road only, so nobody will be able to use that. And for that matter, most of the time government or public organization produces this kind of commodities and the services. However, private organization also may produce this kind of commodities and services. Many a times, in that case, we need government intervention to fix a price or the tax at a particular level. So that is the mechanism. So these are the different types of public goods possible. These commodities, these goods are sometimes called club goods.
Ma'am,
Because, whether you will be a member of a club or not, that may depend on whether you are paying a charge or not. Okay, so this kind of commodities, whether you will be able to swim in a particular pool, whether you will be able to use a particular bridge or dam or a road, whether you will be able to use a particular channel, or all these things are there, and these commodities are a bit chargeable. So there may be public as well as private parties there. However, since the consumption is non-rival, without having any incremental cost, we may allow another person to consume this particular commodity. Many a times we need government intervention, to keep the price or the tax at a particular level. Okay,
Excuse me,
somebody
ma'am.
had some question. Yes.
Ma'am, private townships like the Tata has townships in different cities. In that will be in which category?
That is, uh, totally exclusive and rival. So this is a marketable commodity.
And
Okay.
ma'am, I have a similar question, ma'am. On which category shall we bring cooperatives like Amul?
Cooperatives, these are, a different types of system, So standard commodities are like this. Now, what we can do, several people may come together and may develop a particular project with the help of cooperative, etc. Cooperatives, many a times we find in case of common properties. So, uh, the property is a common property, otherwise there was no right. However, paying something to the owner of the resource, owner means public, the government, we are taking some place when again we are developing on the basis of collecting funds from other people, together we are developing something. Okay, so cooperative, etc., this is also a production mechanism. It's not the different types of commodities we are talking about, so it may happen that you are talking about a typical production system when some people are coming together forming a cooperative, and then the money will be used in that way. They are forming their own resource, and with the help of that common resource they will develop something. Okay, so that is a type of production mechanism, cooperative.
Okay, ma'am. I got it, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so with these basics, you start your study on microeconomics. At this moment, I'll be not able to elaborate a number of things, because for developing all these things, you need some knowledge on perfect knowledge on microeconomics. So if I want to incorporate all these ideas you are asking for, I have to bring positive and negative externalities. So there are certain commodities when the production takes place, there will be some positive externality. Again, there are certain commodities for which when production takes place, there will be some negative externality. Okay, so if there is a very noisy something, in your locality, in that case, there will be always a negative externality. Okay, somebody is doing something, and for that matter, everybody will be irritated. Cigarette smoking, negative externality. Actually, it is more harmful for the non-smokers. It may be harmful for the smokers. However, no statistical test could prove it so far that whether smoking is related to the lung cancer or not, because there are 100 reasons for which the lung cancer can take place. So in that sense, statistically, we cannot relate smoking with the lung cancer. It can only increase the probability. However, there are so many things which can increase the probability of lung cancer. However, those who are non-smokers, passive smoking is more harmful. Okay, so that kind of externality issues are there in the reality. Okay, and sometimes if somebody sings very well, so actually the person is not singing for you. However, that particular voice is changing your mindset. So it may happen. So this is the positive externality. So if there is an apple garden beside a farm which makes honey, in that case, the honey maker will get some positive externality out of that apple orchid. Okay, so all these things are there. So there is positive externality, there is negative externality. So it's not that easy. Production is taking place, there is will be some cost, and accordingly there will be price of the commodity. So things are not that simple in reality. There is some other issues, and combining all these issues, finally we have to decide what will be the price, what will be the tax. So all these things are there. Okay, so later, there will be some context when we will learn about Pigovian tax, Pigovian tax subsidy, all these things. Pigu, actually, famous economist Pigu, started to talk about this kind of taxation when there is negative externality out of production, or subsidy when there is positive externality out of something. So honeymaker can give some can give some subsidy to the owner of the apple orchard, so that he or she can maintain the garden very well. Okay, so this kind of things are there, redistributing the resource in that way to have something which will be optimal. So only the calculus, taking first derivative and the second derivative will not work in the reality. So there are many things beyond the first derivative and the second derivative in the reality. So uh, we will get chance to learn all these things in these course. However, we will be not able to learn everything in the first semester course. Okay, so if I actually need to answer to your questions in that sense, all these questions are related to the idea of positive and negative externalities. So later on, when we will come back to these issues, and with the ideas of positive and negative externalities, you will be able to understand how actually the cost system should be developed, how actually the pricing system, the taxation subsidy system should be developed. Okay, so only the positive things is giving some idea. However, we have to bring the normative along with the positive to have a real sense of the entire thing. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
so I'll not explore much about the context of public goods and market failure. So one of the groups is there to develop the concept or bring something new along with these parts, so that we will get chance to understand the things in a better way, maybe. Okay, so I hope everybody is getting some idea on the project topic. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now you develop your project, and again we will come back to these areas. So now I'm going to start a new chapter that is on consumer theory. Okay. So in next 1 hour, I'll talk about, or I'll like to introduce consumers' preferences, consumers' choice, what is meant by rationality. Okay, so all these things I'll like to develop. So let's take a break for 5 minutes, and let's start from 12:05. Okay, in between, if anyone need attendance, etc.
Ma'am, I have one